I'm with Bruce Nayowith. Hi, Bruce.
Howdy.
So, over the years, we've talked a lot about the notion of what happens when people are together, communicate, and it's not just, say, you and me, but there's also what happens in the field, what's between us, what's around us, and how it affects what's happening.
I would just say yes. We were talking about a lot of pieces about what are some of the elements that seem to make a difference, that seem to make something stronger or more powerful.
Yeah. And so, what led us to do this in a recorded conversation um, is my enthusiasm for the phrase you had used. And it was about welcoming into being. So, do you want to talk a little more about that?
Sure. I love the work of Gordon Newfield. He's a developmentalist, does a lot of parenting work, but I remember him talking about these different life forces and what support development, basically child development, human development. And he'd say that delighting in someone's presence is like the most powerful bonding, connecting interaction that can be done. Also, he used the term, which I really liked, inviting someone to exist in your presence.
Yeah, yeah. So the first phrase was delighting in someone's presence, and connected to it is inviting someone to exist in your presence.
And so, like, to put this as kind of a little quickie rhyme, it's like inviting in and delighting in. And it feels like is a really powerful formula.
Yeah, inviting in and delighting in. And so that sense of we're not just talking about connection as opposed to absence of connection, but it's a strong connection. It's a strong connection. I'm so happy that you exist. And I'm so happy that you exist. In a way, helps you exist.
Yes. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if you want to get into the ontology piece, which I think is kind of lovely. You might want to say something about that now, and then I'll say
Yeah,
something
so
else.
I could, since you bring it. So in philosophy, people usually make a big difference between ontology, which is about being, and phenomenology, which is about what happens as you engage, as action, and how things get shaped by action. And there's normally a very big separation between the two philosophical ways of looking at things. But when you talk about the welcoming into being, then what's very interesting is it's not that you have being in the realm of ontology, but very clearly the welcoming, the action, the interaction, what happens between people, phenomenology is actually what makes the ontology happen. And so I don't want to go into philosophy when I'm saying that, because I certainly am not a
Right.
philosopher. But the thing that's really fascinating is that notion of how things that people could think of as totally separate, there's actually something that, another way of looking at it, and how now the connection is about the interaction. It all starts from there. And the being is just simply something that happens as a result of interaction.
Or maybe we say there is a being, but more being is drawn out. Like you had said earlier, like the delight is how we become more human. Because in social groups, because a child takes attachment cues, let's say from the caregivers, the parents, one of the roles of attachment is to orient the child toward reality. This is real, this isn't real. Oh, we don't hang out with those people. We don't do this. We do this. You kind of learn the ropes. And so there's some exclusion often in a lot of the certain things are welcome. No, don't poop on the floor. Like that's not welcome.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So what you're talking about is how the delight is so powerful that it actually can function in being withdrawn. And being withdrawing the delight is the experience of that sense of shame. And so you if you receive delight and you exist, and if you don't receive delight is a sense of shame and you're not existing and you're not worth existing. And
Right. And so something, there's a, in a way, it's almost like, I mean, if I get a little metaphysical, but it's almost like some spark, whether you call it soul or whether some implicit thing, it's wanting to actually land and expand in the body in our lived experience. And yet, oh, you're not allowed to do that. Oh, no, you have to stay in this box, right? Whereas when you're in a space where people are welcomed into being more of who they are, oh, your feelings are welcome, your intuition's welcome, or and being delighted in, it's a high, it's a very fertile growth milieu, maybe.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the image I have as you're talking about is as if there was something, some particle, some shape, some that is there. And then it can expand or tighten or shrink. And when delighted in, it expands, and otherwise it shrinks.
I mean, it's interesting because who is it, Reich, who talked about things in terms of body armor, expansion and contraction, right? There's like this movement, welcome, hey, hi, how are you? So good to see you. Oh, person lights up, delight, right? And so different from or the disgust or the shame, that, oh my God, right? You can feel the difference in something. At least I can, when I sense it almost like how big or small I am, my field is, I can feel it get bigger or smaller, partly depending on the degree of welcome,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
or
so when feeling welcome, the expansion, but also that the welcoming is an expansion.
yes,
And
yes,
when not welcome, the shrinking. But the not welcome is also the act of not welcoming is also so there is kind of a narrowness to it. And so in some ways there's that similarity of expansion and tightening
yes.
in both the cause and the result, in both the person who's welcoming or rejecting and in the recipient.
There's some kind of transmission of invitation or of exclusion or of disapproval that's often very implicit or in body language or in tone or something. Yes, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And so of course when we talk about the expansion and the narrowing, it's brings me to relate it to say polyvagal modes of ventral vagal
yes.
expansion, mindfulness, social engagement, expansion, large field of vision, opening, connecting, and fight or flight, narrow field, just run away, single minded, danger.
Right. I mean, it's funny. I think I want to change the term a little bit. It's positive social engagement because negative social engagement also has a huge effect, but it's,
Yes.
like you said, I mean, as people say, often we learn these things in community, whether that's our family or our social group or something. So creating groups, intentional groups with a more expansive intention, mission, processes that are much more growth producing, that in some of the, my partner Camille has a lot of Scandinavian roots, and there's something called the Jantelagen, Jantelagen, and the Jantelagen is like 10 rules, but they're like, don't stand out, don't think you're special, don't think you know anything. And they were to protect the tribe from too much individual variation during really cold winters, where if you did something stupid, you die or everybody would die. So it's survival based, but if you carry that into a different environment, it's like there's the social, no, all that stuff's not welcome here.
So there's a lot, and so maybe just I want to slow down and take a moment to see what's what's coming up for me as I hear that.
Hmm.
And so you pointed out that social engagement is not just the welcoming, the opening, the expanding, but if we are literally talking about engaging, it could
Yes,
be
exactly.
the connection itself is one that is rejecting, is one that is shrinking, is one that puts you in your place and that you're not much. And and that has to do, and again, you pointed out, is not necessarily something that is evil, because it can be, as in the Scandinavian development, that it's advantageous for the tribe and the members of the tribe to not be too much,
Correct.
because
Yes.
otherwise it's dangerous for them and for the tribe. And so we're not talking about good or bad in itself, but how it is, in the context.
Exactly. And yes, and social it is the social engagement circuitry. Social engagement circuitry may, when positive, gives you the ventral vagal, but distressing social engagement will trigger the other two, one of the other two routes that,
Yeah,
right, that Porges
yeah,
talks about, right? Polyvagal theory.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so what we're talking about here is what happens in the delight, and how the delight is that expansion, and it's expansion for both. And so, the image that obviously comes from me when we talk about this is the little child, that the parents greet the little child with delight. And it's not conditional delight. It's not, I'm delighted that you exist if you're a certain way. And otherwise you're, bad, bad, and, you
Yes.
don't exist. Yeah. But at the same time, recognizing that it's not just for little kids. Like, for instance, what's happening is today, as in many of our conversations, when we talk and we connect and we feel connected and we have similar ideas and ideas that are different enough to bring something else, I think you and I both experience a delight in the conversation.
Yes, there's a sparkle, and part of that is enjoy. Yes, the conversation has an aliveness, and then, yes, and it feeds, we feed each other, and it feeds something, and it just keeps, almost like it takes us with it. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And so stuff we're talking about is that it's not just something that is, with little kids, but that we can find again some of that. And it does not have to be at the expense of shutting down our intellectual curiosity and excitement.
So I'm going to go somewhere funny with this, if that's okay. Maybe I'll just, maybe I'll just say back that you're kind of being with the power of delight and its uses. It's not just for children, and there's a, I said it can offer a lot. Maybe that's a poor reflection. Go ahead and say
Yeah,
clean
yeah,
up.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I like the idea of not just for children. Delight is not just for children. It's not just about children and not just for children. And it's not just about in the absence of intellectual content.
Yes, yes, and but and also it's kind of interesting because it can be messed with, right? You can have conditional delight. Oh, I'm so happy you got 100 on that test, my sweetheart. And there is delight. And so it does have power and it does shape somebody. Some people really got a lot of positive strokes, including myself, for certain kinds of achievement. And so, like, that's where the delight came. And so it starts to shift the nature of who, right? So it does shape the personality. And then
Yeah,
there's the other piece too, which is the dark side of this in a way, which is that when there's delight, if the delight is really rich, it's easy, almost like for the young child in us to get activated. And that young child doesn't have a lot of critical thinking. So if somebody is using the delight, it is useful occasionally to just check, like, is this sincere? Am I being messed with? Because it can bypass a lot of critical thinking. And I think this is what happens in a lot of relationships. Like, how did I fall for that person? You know? So it's powerful medicine. It's two-edged sword, but lovely and powerful.
so in a way, we're talking about, as something is powerful, it also implicitly has the potential to be dangerous.
Or be misused, or
Something,
right?
yeah,
Yes,
can be
yes,
misused. The power
yes,
and abuse of power.
yeah.
That there is something really, really so endearing, so brings into existence or
Hmm.
nothingness, that it can also manipulate you.
So I'm laughing because what I'm thinking now, sorry, we don't have to go here, but I'm thinking about some of the new AI that just basically says that whatever you do is absolutely wonderful, right? Here's it
Yeah,
also happening in AI. Oh my God, Bruce, that was a brilliant idea, you know? Like, what if I laid 1,000 plates on top of each other or something? Oh, that's such a brilliant artwork. And so like there is this, I start to lose my criticality, like, whoa, AI thinks I'm brilliant. Sorry, I
yeah,
just
yeah. And of course, that's kind of where we come from in the non-AI, in a, craftsman, not industrial level, focusing and Rogerian psychotherapy, that sense of approval, that sense of following, that sense of, yeah, this is great. Yes, yes, the reinforcement. And so it's done with good intentions, but yes, it can
yeah.
also lead someplace else.
This is interesting. I'm going to go, sorry, you know me, I'm going to go over here for a little while.
Yes.
There's a story, a story, legend or something. Somebody said to the historical Buddha, Master, what's going on? This person, you say you need to tighten up your attention and do this. And this other person, you say, no, no, you need to relax more. And the Buddha said, like, I see them walking down a road, and this one's too far to the right. And I say, go a little to the left. And this one's too far to the left. And I say, go a little to the right. He said, that's why I call it the middle way. And I'm thinking like the Rogerian, right? And a lot of these client-centered things, I might be a little heretical here, sorry, came out of a milieu of incredible amount of shoulding that was going on in the 50s and early 60s. And you should this and you should this. And the antidote was to bring it closer to the middle. But I'm wondering about a little too, it also can be overdone. Terry Real talks a lot about this. He said empathy is good for shame, but for grandiosity, you need leverage. Hey, buddy, I want to tell you what happens if you keep doing this, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
people quote the study that, well, I mean, actually in Bruce Ecker's book, Unlocking the Emotional Brain, he quotes a big study that showed that the major determinant of therapy outcome was actually not the relationship. It was whether or not the therapist encouraged and was able to get the client to look at something difficult. Really interesting. So if you have support, you can look at something difficult. But just being supported to never look at anything difficult is like AI telling you you're wonderful. Oh yeah, it's okay that you're beating your partner. Yeah, because I'm sure you're trying to get your aggression out, and I totally understandable. I mean, it's like there now we've gone over the edge. So it's kind of a strange thing to say, but I'm wondering whether or not even, well, you get it. I'll stop
I
there.
do, but that's wonderful. I think that's really wonderful. That sense of, that sense of it's a means to an end. And so that sense of what is the end? What is the goal? What is the context? And so that sense of what the therapy is for is to help somebody transform patterns.
Yes, yes.
And if what you're doing is in the service of transforming patterns, yes. But if it's in the service of
Nicely
actually not
said. Thank
existing,
you. Yes. If it's the
yes,
service of transforming patterns that need to, yes, then yes. Or encouraging emergence. Yeah, you actually need to come out more. Let's delight in this. Exactly.
yes,
That's nicely said. And if it's not in the service of transformation, then yeah, it's going to feel about as good as those AI things. It's going to feel really good. Wow,
yeah,
the
yeah,
computer loves
yeah,
me. I got a
yeah,
fan.
yeah, 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 yeah. And so I want to kind of circle
Wait.
back to in a way what this is about. I mean, it could go in so many directions and expand and so on, but I want to bring it back to the notion of having conversations, group conversations that have the stimulation that come from that mixture of both
Mm,
delighting in what's happening, delighting in the presence, the shared presence, in the interaction, but at the same time, not being so into totally unconditional delight that in a way there's no substance anymore. And so that dancing on the edge of both.
Nicely said. And it's almost like both. And this is, it's interesting. I'm going to also say this from back in 1986 or 87. Someone came to talk to it when I taught high school for a few years about addiction. And he said, you need strong healing processes and you need strong kind of boundaries, both. If you just support, and if you just, I'm going to, tough this. And so like you need both. And it's almost like there needs to be a kind of support, but also something that brings out a little bit of challenge at a certain phase. Not when somebody's at an infantile stage, but when somebody starts, working with material that's, able to, actually start to push a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And so we come back to that notion of the middle way.
Yeah.
Of that what's happening, there's an implicit purpose, and the implicit purpose is a positive change, and it's finding the balance. It's not a middle way that's static, but finding a
Right.
balance
Yes.
between the two poles. But so the two poles have to be present.
Yes, and I imagine some people are going to have a flight path like this, and some might look a little more like this, but yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I
And
do
so,
like, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I do like that because like this also kind of connects with some of it's like I'm going to be going to a men's retreat in a couple of days, and, it's like some groups have become support groups that support but also have a little bit of challenge to them. And some other support groups don't have any challenge. It's almost like AI telling people that they're wonderful. And on some level of fragility, perhaps that's all that somebody can handle. But if somebody, at some point, ideally something else is needed. It's about timing and appropriateness. But I'm just feeling that too. Likewise, there's the welcome and the delight, but also almost like, yeah, wow, we're here and let's look at this a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And so that sense of what is appropriate for any situation.
Yes.
So it's not about this is always the only way to do it, but and we come back to the notion of mindfulness being a sense of figuring out where you are and where you want to go. And so in a way, just if we talk about what happens in a mindful group or in a mindful conversation, if mindful is simply sitting in silence because it's what you expect mindfulness to be, there's something missing, because what's missing is that inquiry into who you are and what the intention is. And in a group, are our intentions aligned? If they're not, is there a conflict or not? Or so that sense of the whole consciousness of the interaction.
Right, and also sharing the legitimate differences, right? Like, okay, well, we're all here to raise consciousness, but for me it's this, and you're like, well, for me it's this, and kind of making a space for them to find some relationship where they work together, or at least don't bang heads.
Yeah. Not assuming that we're all in the same place,
Yes.
have the same goal, or even that, even if we think we do, that the words mean the same thing for people. So,
Yes.
so really that sense of, the space that is a little bit more shifting.
And unpacking, like you're saying, also unpacking all of this.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm into personal growth or I'm into spiritual development. But okay, great. And what does that mean?
Yes.
Because it has a very clear meaning, even if I'm not conscious of it. Something in me knows something. It knows what, and it might be different from what you mean by it.
Yeah. And so when we go to these questions, that it's not, we might approach it in terms of saying, okay, so what it means for me is this, this, and that. But in some way, knowing that the answer is not going to be to agree on a definition, but the unpacking, I like that you use the word
Yes, yes, we may
unpacking,
not agree. Right.
is unpacking is about you sharing the various experiences that are associated with that for you. And I'm sharing the various experiences that are associated with that for me. And so we may not come to a definition. We might actually feel more confused about finding a definition for it, but the field is enriched by the
Yes,
experiences that
yes.
we have shared.
Yes, it's not the unconscious, some of the unconscious motivations made conscious, and the diversity is present, right? I mean, you end up with, instead of a kind of like a monoculture personal growth, you end up with this ecosystem, this personal growth ecosystem in a way, as it
Yeah,
very rich.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's funny because then it's the opposite in some way of what people expect from, okay, so we're going to spend time together to clarify, and clarifying is going to be finding a simple thing. And in some ways, what's happening is we've made the problem bigger and the issue
Yes,
bigger,
yes,
and it has directions coming in all these things. And maybe at the same time as logically, there's going to be less clarity in a purely conceptual way. There is also the felt sense of clarity that does not correspond to intellectual simplification of clarity, but somehow that complexity comes with a
yes.
felt sense of clarity.
Yes, it's not an agreed upon. I mean, it's interesting in dynamic facilitation that, Rosa Zubizarreta wrote the manual about. She has a principle in a group. It's called principled refusal to manage convergence. And what she means is you do not try to get everybody to agree on something. You keep allowing, matter of fact, you do the opposite. It looks like we agree. You sure somebody doesn't have a hesitation here or whatever? You keep trying to enrich the field to get the diversity. And then sometimes it all comes together. And other times everybody just is like, wow, I thought it was a snake, but I'm only holding the tail of the elephant, and you thought you had a pillar, but you're only holding the leg, and we may see the elephant, or we might just know it's a big animal and can't even see it yet, right?
Yeah,
But there's
yeah,
something,
yeah.
like you said, there could be less clarity, but still a bigger something. Something is there's more appreciation.
So when you say appreciation, it brings us back to that notion of delight. And what's happening is we delight in the diversity. We delight in the
Hmm.
enrichment
Hmm.
as opposed
Yes,
to the
yes,
narrowing and impoverishment.
yes.